Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to open this last session of the EDMO week. And it's actually a pleasure to chair this session with such distinguished panelists we have today. The focus of the session, as you all know, is media and information literacy with a specific focus on online disinformation. We all know that media literacy is a key element on the overall strategy of strengthening societal resilience and empowering citizens. And I have to say, not by chance, this is an issue that came up throughout the whole EDMO week discussion. At a certain moment, we heard someone introducing, of course, media and information literacy. What is often said, and I have to say rightly so, is that, of course, media literacy cannot be the only solution to fight against online disinformation. And in any case, it should be, let's say, a collaborative exercise. Let me just mention an example. In the recently published guidance by the European Commission, the Commission invites the platform to commit to safe design. So basically, we know that the design and the architecture of the services online have an impact on the user's behavior. And it invites also the platform to involve the media literacy experts in doing this exercise and also in, let's say, evaluating and assessing the campaigns that they are running. Let me say that this is kind of the point that I wanted to do before actually giving the floor to our distinguished speakers. But before doing that, let me also remind that we have a difficult task today because media literacy is probably the broadest topic in the field. We know that when we talk about media literacy, I mean, there are many actors involved. Let's think of NGOs, but also the public institutions, private actors, the media, and so on. There's a wide target audience, depending, for example, on the age or the level of education. And on top of this, we also know that there are national and language, let's say, specificities related to media literacy. So it's a big challenge today, but I think that it is self-evident that when we talk about media literacy initiatives, we really need to listen to what the experts tell us in this field, because it's a pedagogical exercise and we cannot make it wrong. So it's really a pleasure for me to start with this session, and I will give the floor to Emma Goodman. Emma actually works with EDMO on media literacy, and she is also based at the London School of Economics. Emma, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paula. It's great to be here. And yes, so as Paula said, I've been working with EDMO as a consultant on the media literacy strand, and I also work as a policy officer at the London School of Economics and Political Science. And so I just wanted to say, a few words about how we're approaching media literacy. We all know, as Paula said, that media literacy is a crucial tool in the fight against disinformation. It is certainly not the only solution, and it is definitely not only important for tackling disinformation. But of course, the public that is both critically and digitally literate are much more likely to be able to assess the information that they encounter online, to identify sources that they can trust, and make well-informed decisions as citizens, consumers, and more. And being media literate obviously opens up opportunities to engage more fully with the online and offline media world. And we're very aware that media literacy is important for adults as well as children. It's not something you learn once and then you're done. And it's also, it's about both practical skills, but just as importantly about knowledge and awareness of the digital environment and how it operates. And so we have been, going through this process of defining the most useful role for EDMO to play in this area in a way that complements the myriad of initiatives and fantastic work that's already going on in the field, including by others on this panel. The idea from the start has been to build a repository of media literacy initiatives, but there are, of course, questions about how exactly to go about this and what to include. So I'm sure, as most people here know, there are a huge number of different media literacy initiatives across Europe. There are international efforts as well as projects at the European Commission level. There's projects at the national level and the local level. There are different approaches taken in different countries and efforts sit under different umbrella organizations. And of course, there's the requirement in the revised Audiovisual Media Services Directive to promote and take measures for the development of media literacy skills and report on these regularly. And there are currently guidelines being developed in order to do this. So there are policymakers and regulators working on this, as well as academics, civil society, and then there are the news organizations, the tech companies, and of course, not forgetting teachers, librarians, parents, and more. there are different groups and networks and one-off projects, lots of research and mapping tools and more. So, in terms of the role that EDMO can play, our conversations so far have identified, a desire for sort of clarity in terms of who is doing what, who is responsible for what in this, immensely complex field. And sort of trying to create a place where, different stakeholders can come together and become aware of different types of initiatives going on. For example, educators and regulators who might not have contact elsewhere. And there's a desire to strengthen and develop existing networks. And we've been talking a lot about getting, best practices together for those who are looking at what to do, including different examples of projects, so involving different types of actors, including education or campaign materials. And, related to this is a wish to have somewhere that can amplify the reach of particularly effective projects. And we know that measuring impact and effectiveness is a definite challenge in this area. And we're aware that there are various ongoing efforts looking at monitoring and assessing the impact of media literacy, and we're following these closely and we'll seek to integrate these in our efforts. There's also been the suggestion of creating a place to find out what different tech platforms and video service providers are doing in each country. And importantly, we're going to work in conjunction with the new national and multinational EDMO hubs as they embark on organising media literacy activities and campaigns. We hope to both support them and to gather information from them about what they need and what is proving effective. And I know we're going to be hearing more from the national hubs later this afternoon. So at the moment, we are still seeking input from stakeholders on how EDMO can be helpful to them in media literacy, and we'd very much welcome any comments on this here. But I'm going to stop now, and I very much look forward to hearing from the others in this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you a lot for introducing what we are doing at EDMO. And it is my pleasure now to give the floor to Sally Reynolds. Sally is a member actually of the advisory board of EDMO, and she is also working at the Media and Learning Association, and she is an expert in the field, and I'm very happy to have her here today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Paula. It's very nice to be here and to be with you and the others on the panel today. Yes, as you said, I work part-time for the Media and Learning Association. It's a largely European, not-for-profit international association which was set up more than 10 years ago. At the moment, we have about 60 organisational, networking and sponsoring members in 15 countries, which includes universities, ministerial agencies, associations and NGOs. So our primary mission is to promote and stimulate the use of media as a way to enhance innovation and creativity in teaching and learning across all levels of education. So we very much come to the media literacy field from the side of media education, and we work with several of our members like Evans Foundation, MediaWays and Nordicom to support media literacy in the context primarily of formal and informal primary and secondary education, and with our many university members who are also responsible for pre-service and in-service teacher training. So in terms of the kinds of activities that we're involved with around media literacy, we run regular webinars. We're just finishing our Wednesday webinar series on media literacy in different countries. We've also been involved in some specific events like the Fight Disinformation with Media Literacy event, which we organised with Evans in November 2018. We also partner in projects. We've just started a project, a Erasmus Plus project, which is led by the National Library in the Netherlands about developing an effective intervention strategy aimed at tackling disinformation, which will be run by teachers and librarians. And we also run a news site and social media channels along with the monthly newsletter. And one of our main focuses there is in fact media literacy. So that gives us a little bit of a bird's eye view of media literacy and media education in Europe. And that's what I'd like to briefly discuss. First of all, give you a quick impression of what we see in terms of the current picture, and maybe to share some thoughts about how we think things could be improved. First of all, just echoing, of course, what Emma has said, the situation at the moment, of course, as we all know with education, is it's largely a matter of national or regional responsibility. So policy at European level comes largely in the form of recommendation. This means that it's up to national, regional, and often local authorities to decide what to do themselves in schools about media literacy and media education. The current situation about support to media literacy and media education, of course, varies hugely. On the one hand, you have countries like France, where you have a dedicated agency, CLEMI, from the Ministry of Education, which is responsible for media literacy and education, which has a long history of working with schools. And then you have other countries in Europe, like Croatia, where, of course, media literacy and education, although there's lots of initiatives, is not the responsibility of any one government agency. And you see a really mixed picture right the way across Europe. Here in Flanders, the Media Waste, the initiative is under the responsibility of the Ministry of Media. In other places, you have different agencies taking the lead. In Ireland, you have, for example, the Broadcast Authority, Greece, ICOME. So it's a very mixed picture in terms of media education and media literacy, particularly in schools. When it comes to school curriculum, the situation is also hugely variable. Where it is addressed at all, and in some cases not addressed at all, media literacy and media education is considered across the curriculum rather than as a separate subject or as something that is left to informal activities outside school hours. Where it does appear as a separate subject, it's often bundled with digital literacy, with a focus more on digital and media skills and competences rather than attitude. Third important thing I think to say about media literacy and media education is that education today, of course, is very much about measurement according to benchmarks, standards, targets. And of course, the underlying problem here is for many schools and staff, they think that if you can't test it, you don't teach it. So we know that effective media literacy and media education is all about developing healthy attitudes to media. So this challenge of how to really understand the impact our interventions are having, the level of attitude change in ways that fit within the educational mindset is one that we continue to face. Also, don't forget the huge time pressure that there is in schools, even before Corona. Everyone has an opinion about schools because we've all been to school. And in the end, everybody blames teachers for everything. And so the pressure on teachers to solve society's problems is often huge. So simply telling schools that they have to take the lead in providing effective media literacy and media education in their already very busy curriculum without giving them the means and opportunity to do so is bound to fail. So as it currently stands, the current status of media literacy, media education interventions aimed at young people in many countries is that they're usually far too sporadic. They depend on once-off experiences for students, many of which are led by NGOs without the necessary resources. Also, I think we have something to say about the nature of many of these interventions. Far too often they are very oriented towards traditional media. We have got lots now of journalists in the classroom type activities, and I'm very conscious of Julianne watching this because, of course, there's nothing wrong with these and they offer a very interesting experience for students. But the model addressed in these kinds of initiatives is very often the traditional media one, when the problem lies far more with the everyday social media context which our young people find themselves in. You can have an impact with these kinds of actions, and pupils will certainly learn more about how journalists work in more traditional settings and the pressure they're under, but they're usually once-off interventions in the school year if the pupils are lucky. They create great excitement when they occur, but I think alongside them, we need to find more systemic, sustainable approaches that are at the core of the curriculum. We need to look from a young person's perspective at their social media bubble, how influencers work, at media literacy and media education in the context of the social media challenges faced by young people, which include, of course, cyberbullying, doxing, sexting, and all the rest. So what could help? I think the focus on teachers and teacher education in service and pre-service is absolutely fundamental. We need to make media literacy and media education an integral part of the teacher's toolkit and skill set. Motivate and treasure teachers who do an effective job at this throughout the year. Teachers are the key here, but they need to be motivated, skilled, and given the resources, including time, to do an effective job. I think we need to consider disinformation in the same way as we look at, for example, obesity among young people, which is a potential public health risk. We need to foster a healthy approach to media in the same way as we try to foster a healthy attitude to food in young people, if we're to counter what we all agree to be a growing risk, the health of our society. Even though you can ban unhealthy food and discourage advertising that promotes unhealthy eating in the fight against obesity, it's only when you have a healthy attitude to eating that you have succeeded. It's the same way with media literacy and media education. This implies that we need to consider disinformation as a public mental health challenge and act accordingly. I think we also need more knowledge, we all agree on this, about how young people and everyone reacts to information disinformation. As is becoming increasingly shown from research, minds do not work the way we expect them to do. And so we really need a better understanding of the impacts of our interventions from a research perspective rather than a purely anecdotal one. I think it's important to remind ourselves it's not enough to throw knowledge with a focus on facts at young people in the hope that this will have an impact. I really would like to echo Paul Verschuur's talk on Monday when he talked about this and he disputed the notion of feeding reason with knowledge. As we know, knowledge alone is not enough and doesn't bring wisdom. We have to find ways in our schools to provide a place for young people to gain the attitudes, skills, competences, and knowledge they need to be responsible and fulfilled citizens. Otherwise, we've failed them. I think I'd like to finish with a little bit of good news. And the good news, I think, is that we're moving out of our old silos and there's less talk about definitions, MIL versus ML, media literacy, digital literacy. So maybe we should be a little bit grateful to the phenomenon of disinformation, helping us to worry less about definition and who owns media literacy and be more concerned about tackling a growing problem. And just finally, I think the notion, of course, of a broad coalition is wonderful. It was great to hear Vera Jourova refer to that in her presentation on Wednesday afternoon. So I think it's really good to see initiatives like the chosen topic for the very successful e-twinning initiative that involves thousands of schools in Europe every year. This year, it's media literacy. So I think we need lots and lots more kinds of this sort of joined up thinking. And if I have a quick moment before we finish, I'd just like to show one slide just to give our links of our information from, if you would like to know more about what we do in our association. And it's this slide here, and that's me done.
Okay, I think on screen we see the slide that was shared by Sally, and I would like to thank a lot Sally for her intervention. It was, I have to say, really interesting. I think it confirms also what we were saying at the beginning of this EDMO week, the need of having a multidisciplinary approach. I mean, here we are talking about different specializations that are involved when we're dealing with these issues. So now I'm very happy to give the floor to Professor Sonia Livingstone. She's a professor at LSE. She published, I have to say, extensively in this sector. She has also a specific focus on children, and as a mother, I have to say that parenting for digital future is kind of, I'm always waiting for that newsletter, Sonia, I have to say, because it's always very interesting and I already shared it with a lot of other parents. So the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paula, so much. It's always nice to know when one's work is read. So I'm a researcher, originally a social psychologist, now working in a Department of Media and Communication, and I do all kinds of projects, very often European Commission funded, very often focused around young people's digital activities in one way or another, for better or for worse. And when I think about what holds all my work together, it's the question of media literacy. So I'm delighted to be addressing you today. I have to say that I somewhat echo Sally's sense, and I know this is perverse, that disinformation has done us sort of a favour in raising the question of media literacy higher on the agenda. There's been really amazing, creative and very multidisciplinary concerted efforts over decades to get educators, policymakers and all kinds of stakeholders to recognise the absolutely pivotal nature of media literacy in an increasingly mediated, increasingly digital world, and the kind of public sense or the popular sense that media are somehow just a matter of leisure, just a sort of an optional thing that we might engage with and never very important, is really something that it is vital to move beyond. As we know, media are the way in which now we work, we learn, we participate as citizens, we engage in absolutely everything. And the pandemic, I would never see anything good in the pandemic either, but it has had this also unintentional consequence, I think, of making people recognize how crucial it is that the public, in all its diversity, understands the nature of the technology that it relies on and understands how that digital technology shapes our access to the world that we live in, to our democracy, to the world of information and participation. So some perverse consequences have led us to, I think, an important realization. And this does make it a very exciting moment to really think crucially about what it is that we can do now that media literacy is properly, I think, on the agenda. I thought I'd focus my few minutes on some remarks, particularly about the some of the recent research findings, because knowing that this moment has kind of arisen on the research agenda, researchers in many different areas have been doing their utmost to kind of bring the findings to the table in order that the policy and practice that now emerges at this critical juncture is properly evidence-based and informed by the best thinking. One thing I thought I would mention, I'm part of a European project called Y Skills, which stands for Youth Skills, and really kind of takes up the skills agenda, the digital skills agenda, as part of the European Commission's kind of digital agenda. And Sally hinted at the relation between digital skills and media literacy and digital literacy, and we won't go down the rabbit hole of terminology. But in that project, we just completed a systematic evidence review looking at all the research we could find of the last 10 years relating to young people and their digital stroke media skills stroke literacies, the whole kit and caboodle, the whole thing. And actually the findings were fascinating and I think very helpful for the question of disinformation. Because what we found is that when young people gain, as it were, functional skills, technical skills, how to use the technology kind of on its own, without being also taught information skills and critical skills, some things get worse. Some of the outcomes are actually negative. Risks increase, misinformation increases. And I wanted to emphasize this point because I think in many countries, I certainly know in my own, the media and digital literacy agenda has often been given to the computer science department in the school. And the computer science department understandably wants people to understand about functional skills. It's fine, but it is not going to solve the information and media and disinformation problem. So teaching information, or those young people who'd gained information literacy skills specifically, had the most positive outcomes as we charted in our systematic evidence review. And this echoes, or this is taken forward in a report that my colleague Lee Edwards and others just published yesterday, actually, on the question of strategies for overcoming misinformation in terms of digital and media literacy, where what they found also from an evidence review, now thinking across the board, across the population, and focus more strongly on literacy, they found that what made the difference is efforts that promote critical thinking, evaluation, and knowledge of news, and that together there is the best evidence that promoting those kinds of critical and evaluative skills improves the people's critical engagement with information. And that made me want to just kind of reinforce a point that I think Emma or maybe Paula made earlier about pedagogy, that information skills are not something that are gained in a single kind of one-shot campaign, but they really do take time to develop. And so I appreciated Sally's point that teachers feel very burdened with this new and demanding task, and the technological world is very complex. But really, we have to look for practices that are sustained over time as people develop, young people, but everybody develops their knowledge. There was a significant gap in the work that my colleagues did for Ofcom, which I also wanted to draw your attention to, because I think a lot of the thinking in the field thinks about the needs of the user sitting at home, as it were, on one side of the screen, and the nature of the information that they engage with on the other side of the screen, whether that's good or poor quality information. And what my colleagues did not find was evidence really of how, of the role of the technology itself. And I know that in the colleagues thinking about the production of disinformation are very concerned at the role of algorithms in amplifying certain kinds of misinformation and taking people in a more extreme direction. From the user's side, this is all considered, this is all quite opaque and very hard to understand. And of course, the impetus of digital design is to make the user experience frictionless, friction-free. So all of the kind of digital processes, the design processes that mean certain kinds of information reach us in certain combinations and others, or certain disinformation reaches us in certain ways, is made invisible to the user. And I think that's a fantastically difficult challenge for users themselves and also for educators. And that's why I would say that a critical approach to the digital literacy must be part of a media literacy strategy. And just to kind of follow up on the point about burdening teachers, I think we also must recognise the limits to this at some point, and this is what I like about the EDMO platform. And as we argued in our LSE Truth, Trust and Technology Commission last couple of years ago, media literacy must be seen as part of a wider strategy of regulation, because there is a limit to what we can teach people, because this technological world is fast, complex, and deliberately, dare I say, opaque and manipulative. And because any educational strategy, frankly, will be unequal in its consequences. Knowledge is always taken up more by those who already know more. And unless there's a very deliberate strategy at targeting, those who are more disadvantaged or harder to reach will learn less from educational strategies. So education has the danger of reinforcing knowledge gaps unless there's very strong efforts to overcome it. So I wanted to kind of bring a few insights from the world of research. I think it's an interesting and fascinating challenge that we have before us. I look forward to, I'll stop here and I'll look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. It was very interesting listening to you, and yeah, I see teachers coming up in any like intervention, and I have to say probably it is also a point of teaching to the teachers, no? Because especially when they are in like an older generation, this also has a limit with the technology that develops very fast. So yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. I'm now giving the floor to Juliane von Reppert-Bismarck. She's the founder and executive director of Lie Detectors. I have to say the first time I talked to Juliane, I was impressed by her passion and enthusiasm in what she's doing. And I have to say Lie Detectors is doing a lot. Again, in a few go back to what we were saying before, but still it's already a good achievement. And I give you the floor now, Juliane.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paula. And thank you to EDMO for setting up this this really excellent week of talks and discussions on these important topics. So as Paula said, Lie Detectors is an independent and award-winning, luckily, media literacy organization that works with professional journalists across Europe to tackle disinformation and thereby tackle the corrosive effect that disinformation has on democracy. And we do that by selecting, training, and sending journalists into classrooms these days during the pandemic via video conferencing to speak to young people aged 10 to 15 and to their teachers about how to sort fact from fiction online to really become their own fact checkers, and how to understand how professional journalism actually works. And we also harness our findings from the field through questionnaires that we distribute to the children and to the teachers, many of them handwritten to be GDPR compliant, in order to contribute to the international and national policy debate and advocate for smart policies, both on the side of education and also on the side of data rights. One important point is we're non-political. We take no money either from political or commercial entities. And as Paula requested, I'm going to tell you briefly about how we do our work, because we do it in a very practical way, what we've learned from this work, and then I'm going to speak a little bit about what has been done on the EU level, as Paula asked, and what can still be achieved. So we currently work with 250 journalists in 4 countries. We will be starting in another 2 EU countries this year, and we are piloting in the United States next year. These days we're doing it all virtually, and this year so far we've visited 250 classrooms, and I'm going to share my screen and show you what this may look like for the kids when a journalist comes in. We've actually just selected a few photos from, hold on a second, here we go. Okay, let me see, up, right. So I hope you can see this. Is everybody seeing the correct slide? Are you seeing the one? Oh, okay, good. No notes. That's fine. That's good. Excellent. So we've really designed our project to translate easily from one language to another, and from one media landscape to another as well. And also to be very aware of the age-relevant approach. As Sally said, that's one of the most important things, to be able to engage the children and engage the teachers at their level. This is what 3 different recent journalist visits looked like. They're doing it either via homeschooling, which you can see one of them where we've blanked out the faces of the children. Often they're sitting actually by now already in the classroom. It's quite an interesting way of doing it. And although this format was actually forced upon us by the pandemic, we are incredibly glad that we have developed it, because it means that we can actually reach the further geographical, extremities of Europe in a way that we were not able to do previously. So even when the pandemic is done, we are definitely going to be sticking with this to a certain extent, to be able to get to these remote communities where a journalist reaching a class of students is normally just impossible. What we're trying to achieve by what we do is a virtuous cycle, really. Our aim is to create a virtuous cycle where the journalists come in, they raise the interest of the kids, which encourages in turn the teachers to take up the subject themselves, which is one of the most important things to do, as those of us working in media literacy know the buy-in from the teachers will make or break any project. This will also lead teachers, hopefully, to request more training. This is what we have found, and that in turn will inform and encourage policy debate, and also the newsrooms, because the journalists often tell us that when they go into a classroom, they learn at least as much from the kids as the kids are learning from them. So this virtuous cycle, I'm pleased to say, has already taken effect. So since we started in 2017, the interest among teachers has really grown and become more specific. They also know more about what they don't know, and so we're increasingly getting requests from teachers for training. And Sally mentioned e-twinning. We're extremely active via e-twinning, and we also get requests from local and educational authorities to train teachers. Interestingly, the subject matter that we treat with the children, which we tailor to 10 to 15-year-olds, is often relevant directly to teachers. It needs very little tweaking. And what we found is really interesting. The good news is that kids are really interested in all of this. We ask them what they're interested in, and some of our findings. I'm not going through many statistics. I'm very happy to share an awful lot of data with you, but I don't think that today is the day to do that. What we found is really interesting. No classroom is immune to disinformation. This does not break down on socioeconomic boundaries. The children who nowadays walk up to the screen to ask the journalist questions, they're very interested in conspiracy theories increasingly, chain letters, why disinformation even exists. So we're really noticing that the curiosity is there, and by waking the curiosity of the children, it awakens that of the children, of the teachers as well. The other thing that we have found is that kids are really not circulating where you think they might be. They are not on Facebook and Twitter. And forgive me, we are currently working on this data, so it's not beautiful yet. But if you look at the light blue dots, those are the students. And if you look at the dark blue dots, those are the teachers. And what you can see is kids are not informing themselves on Facebook or Twitter. They are deeply in what Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook has called the digital living room. That is, they're on WhatsApp, they're on TikTok, they're informing themselves via YouTube. Wikipedia is old news. Nobody looks at Wikipedia anymore. They're on Twitch to inform themselves. And these are all, encrypted and image-based information sources for them. And that matters for two reasons. First, it means that kids and adults are just, in fact, informing themselves in two entirely different universes, if you look at the gaps between the teachers and the children. And we must bear that in mind when we're doing media literacy work. And also, when they navigate there, they're not really being protected very much by fact checkers. These are not places where a fact checker can necessarily get to, or AI, or clever AI, because of the image-based and an encrypted nature of these platforms. The good news is that, as I said, the children are very interested, so the teachers. Almost 100% of teachers ask for follow-up material once we've been there. And they tell us when we ask them that this actually fits into all sorts of subject areas. So this is not something that belongs into IT or even civics. The teachers themselves tell us that it fits into also all manner of subject areas. I'm going to stop this slideshow because I want to get on to the next point, which is that the other thing that raises the interest of policymakers is when we can. Have I stopped sharing? Have I stopped my screen share? There we go. Wonderful, thank you. So the other side of this interest spectrum is the policy interest and political interest. And the fact that we're all sitting here and talking about this shows just how much media literacy has really risen on the policy agenda. And what we have found is that the fact that we are able to harness data, the fact that we're able to measure, and the fact that we are increasingly measuring the results of our media literacy work really does capture the interest of policymakers. And that's going to be one of my recommendations as well. But so our questionnaires, we have had great help from Stephen Lewandowski, cognitive psychology at Bristol University, and also Divina Frau-Meggs of the Sorbonne and Savoir Devenir, one of whose partners is, I believe, speaking in a little while. And this policy interest segues very nicely into speaking about what's been happening at EU level and what can also still be done, which EDMO has asked us to specify. So what's been done is, we're very pleased to see there's been a greater emphasis on media and information literacy by the Education Department of the European Commission, and we can see this in the Digital Education Action Plan. And we also really welcome the additional emphasis in the European Democracy Action Plan that's in place on media literacy. we have a lot of recommendations when it comes to how to work on media literacy in this arena and with this age group, but I will limit myself to some recommendations on the policy level. So we would really say that, five things. First, remember that fact-checking alone is not going to solve this problem. We're going to have to go at this from a variety of angles, and media literacy is a very important one. Second, integrate media literacy into all school curricula, but also into all teacher training curricula, because this is where the multipliers sit, and these are the ones that are going to carry this forward. We also encourage the European Union to, encourage and urge the OECD to make critical literacy a part of the PISA rankings gauges, so that this really starts to become recognized as a core literacy alongside reading and writing and counting. 3, encourage them, and if you're going to be drawing lessons from it, you really have to stick with it for quite a long time. Now, over the last 4 days, I note there has been quite a lot of attention and mentions made of the need for transparency, of funding, of the need for diversity of funding and independence. We would add our voice to this as being a very important element in securing the credibility and sustainability of the work that we're all trying to do together. The good news is that there are many avenues of funding. We at Leidetech have been approached multiple times by foundations and very different kinds of donors. So the idea of mixed funding that avoids capture is one that can very easily be realized. And those are my points for now, and I welcome any questions that might come later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julianne. And I will now give the floor to Maria Donde. Maria is the head of international content policy at Ofcom, but also the vice chair of the European Platform of Regulatory Authorities, EPRA, which was also mentioned quite a lot during this week. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Paula, and thank you to all of the speakers who've already talked today. Also, thank you very much to EDMO, to the team, and to Paula again for organising what's been a fantastic week. I've been managing to listen into many of the sessions. It's been both technically, but perhaps most importantly, substantially, really, really excellent. So thank you very much for all of the content this week. Yes, as Paula said, I'm here representing the EPRA network, and just a couple of words on EPRA, and then I will talk briefly about the work that media regulators have been doing in the field of media literacy, and then hopefully explore how we can work with EDMO in the future. We are very, very excited about EDMO's thoughtful, ambitious plans in relation to media literacy as Emma has set out, and we're really keen to collaborate as much as possible. So EPRA is an informal network of media regulators in Europe. It's quite old. You've probably heard this week quite a lot about ERGA, which is the network of regulators that advises the European Commission. We are not affiliated to any institutions, and we are fully independent and have over 50 members from over 40 countries, all representing the media regulatory community. We very much set our own agenda, and on that basis, it's been really several years now that EPRA has been focusing quite intently on the subject of media and information literacy. I'll use media literacy for short today, but that's the terminology we tend to apply. We have spent several years sharing practices, forming an informal group within our network, working with organizations like the European Audiovisual Observatory in their attempts to map media literacy activity. And that's, something really important in this field. The repository that's planned by EDMO is would have been on our wish list, I think, for several years. And so we're particularly excited about that, based on that first mapping exercise that we were involved in. And, just trying to understand where it is that the regulators can play a role here. Media regulatory authorities have several functions within that could be relevant to media literacy. That includes conducting research, very much Ofcom's area, for example, producing educational materials, running campaigns, information campaigns themselves, and increasingly, and this is really where our focus has placed itself, coordinating activity and setting up media literacy networks. in general, media literacy is a critical component and a critical complement to regulation. I would almost turn Sonia's formulation the other way around, which is to say that where she very reasonably says there's no point having the education without additional regulation to come in and reinforce and add to what the education can do. But I think also there are some regulations which will be very, very difficult to be effective unless there is an accompanying level of education and critical awareness. So yes, as I say, we've chosen to focus in particular on this coordination and facilitating role that media regulators can play, where we are not necessarily the experts, the practitioners, the ones on the ground, but we are in a good position because of our relationship with stakeholders, with industry, with educators, with non-governmental organizations, to be able to bring those types of organizations together. We've seen some of our members set up media literacy networks. And so on that basis, we've actually created a network within EPRA, a new acronym for you. We are called EMIL, the Media Literacy Network, Media and Information Literacy Network within EPRA. And our focus is on the activity of coordinating multi-stakeholder activity. We have several tasks and we'll be, for example, publishing a paper on networks, typology, if you like, near the end of this year. We're mostly created in order to encourage coordination and learning amongst our own members. We want to help to develop networks and partnerships between us as well. And in particular, we want to give networks themselves a voice. There is no umbrella organization for media literacy networks, or has not been up until now. And that's the role that we really want to play, in particular in terms of our dialogue with organizations like EDMO. One thing I just wanted to mention as well was one output that came from our task force earlier this year. We were very conscious, of course, as regulators, of the way in which media literacy has been fleshed out in the new Audiovisual Media Services Directive. There are a couple of new provisions in relation to media literacy there. One focused on responsibilities of member states, and one on video sharing platforms. And we published earlier this year, and I'm happy to share the document with everyone, a set of reflections on how all actors involved in media literacy can help to ensure that video sharing platforms are meeting that obligation in the most effective way. Some findings from those reflections, some observations, let's say, because EPRA does not reach common positions or make recommendations. But some observations that we made was that there was a lack of a systematic approach by anyone, actually, in this field, where platforms have very laudable campaigns and activities. They are not very predictable. They are not very consistent in terms of how they reach across different countries and in different languages. And they are not very consistent in how they are evaluated, how their effects are evaluated. So those might be areas where platforms might want to consider putting their efforts. We also made the same comment to states and to legislators as well. So we were very fair, I think. We also highlighted the importance of multi-stakeholder networks. You won't be surprised to hear, in terms of the way in which they allow best practices to be shared, resources to be shared, partnerships to be formed, and expertise to move throughout the relevant actors. And I think, this won't be a surprise to anyone working on the EDMO project, because this is, exactly that kind of multi-stakeholder, multidisciplinary cooperation and coordination, which I think, it sits very much in the spirit of EDMO too. We, of course, also reflected on the positive role that regulatory oversight can have in this space, setting standards, setting policy, showing leadership, and of course coordinating activity. So my final thoughts really are about how we can work together. I think EMIL, with its roots into media literacy networks at the national level, can hopefully contribute to the repository, and we're very, very ready to do so. We're already in close contact with Emma on that. our members are interested in knowing how EDMO will avoid duplication with other existing groups and bodies, how the repository will be kept up, and how it can be promoted and maintained with the kinds of partnerships that we are ourselves trying to develop. And of course, really keen to know the extent to which the national hubs, will be also routes for ML members to participate in, and where not, if they can continue to have a relationship with EDMO if they're not necessarily involved in those hubs. So really hoping to have that kind of conversation in a moment. And the final thing I just wanted to say was that I think, having listened to the expertise and the really impressive inputs from all kinds of people involved in EDMO this week, I do think there's a role for EDMO in policy leadership in this space as well. I think that there is sometimes a bit of a gap there, I think, and I would be really interested in hearing more on the media literacy policy side from the observatory. So thank you so much for inviting me to speak today, and I'll hand back to Paula. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. I hope we will get to the Q&A because we are a little running late. So I will ask actually Milan, Paula and Giacomo to kind of stay within the time. And I will now give the floor to Milan Zubisek. He is a government affairs and public policy manager at Google. And I'm really looking forward to hear what also the platforms, in this case, Google, are doing in media literacy. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Paula, and big thanks to EDMO for organizing this week of fruitful discussions and for inviting me to this conversation, because this is really such an important topic, and we are taking our commitment to tackling misinformation in our product incredibly seriously, of course, and our content policies and products play a very important role in raising authoritative content, reducing misinformation, and really helping users make informed judgments about the credibility of news they find on Google and then they consume on other websites. And to date, we have developed a number of products, from fact-checking labels to publisher knowledge panels and leveraging trust indicators to really help people develop their own critical thinking about what they are clicking on and what they are reading. And the last year, of course, has just proven how important it is for people to access accurate information and to really sort the facts from fiction. We've been working with health services, news publishers, governments around the world to really ensure our users get the information about COVID-19 that they want. They get the answers they need and the accuracy they deserve, on time, in local languages, based on inputs from reputable local health authorities. And media literacy is, of course, absolutely critical in this sense. And it's also clear that there is an unmet demand. According to a recent report by Ipsos, fewer than 1 in 10 Europeans have participated in any form of online media literacy training. And 60% of respondents say that they are interested in learning about how to use the tool to distinguish between true and false information online. And really helping the world make sense of information during the pandemic requires a broad-based response. As has been mentioned before, it really requires a collaboration between scientists, journalists, public figures, technology experts, and many others. And media literacy is this sort of very important, rather longer-term activity, which needs to accompany the sort of more immediate short-term actions, removing harmful misinformation, raising the authoritative sources, reducing the scope of this sort of borderline content, and constantly improving products and policies. Media literacy, again, as has been said, spans generation, education levels, and cultures, and there's no really one-size-fits-all solution. And it's very important to keep in mind the local approaches. Different geographies have widely different requirements, and we know that there are different collaborative partnerships required. And we really, really know and aware and value that we cannot do this alone. So we've been working with many different experts in this area, and via our own programs and in collaboration with partners, we've trained more than 7 million young Europeans in digital skills and media literacy. I will not go through all the different programs. I will mention just 2 in France. 2 Google.org grantees have provided trainings to debunk fake news and conspiracy theories through online program Atelier Numérique. And in Germany, Google.org funded Weitblick. It's a project that aims to engage teachers of secondary schools and really help them address misinformation online and its impact on democratic societies. And in order to achieve a sort of nationwide implementation in Germany, the project works with ministries of education to certify the project's resources along states' curricula. Also, through Google News Initiative, we have provided digital verification trainings to more than 90,000 European journalists. We also announced a donation of 3 million euros to support fact-checking about COVID-19 vaccinations. This is, of course, the topic that we are focusing on right now, within particularly underrepresented audiences around the world. And it's here really important to say that the fact-checking isn't just for professionals and for journalists to engage in. Every day, people are seeking evidence to confirm or refute a piece of information they are certain about. And of course, they are using Google services to do that. And over the past 12 months, I think, Google searches for "is it true that" are ranking really high. Well, certainly higher than how to make bread and other topics, which just taking into account the sort of sourdough craze is a big sign. That's, for example, why on our homepage, ahead of the International Fact-Checking Day, we shared 5 simple principles and tips to help people spot misinformation online. So we're really using our platforms to push those important messages. And finally, in March this year, we contributed 25 million euros to help launch the European Media and Information Fund to strengthen media literacy skills, fight misinformation, support fact-checking. The objective of this fund, which is run by the European University Institute and the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation, and which I think is really important to highlight, is completely independent of Google, will be focusing on, first of all, helping adults and young people strengthen their media literacy skills, supporting and scaling the critical work of fact-checkers, and strengthening the expertise, research, and resources to help fight misinformation. And we're really excited and looking forward to see impactful European projects being supported by the fund. So just to quickly wrap up, we know that this is something that requires a collaboration between experts, publishers, researchers, companies, and also policymakers and regulators, as Maria rightly pointed out. We've made a lot of progress thanks to also the Code of Practice on Disinformation, which we co-founded, and we welcome the Commission's guidance in this sense. We agree that the policies and the policymakers are really critical in this area, and we are now working on updating the Code of Practice and to really make sure that it is fit to its objectives. And we are fully committed to collaborate and to really find new ways to continue the fight against disinformation. And we very much look forward to working with everyone on achieving these objectives together. Let me stop here. Thank you, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much, Milan. I will now give the floor to Paolo Cerot. He is the founding member and director of EAVI, Media Literacy for Citizenship. And if you have not checked it out yet, I would suggest you to go and actually discover what you're eating through your screens. It's like the EAVI menu, which is running right now on their website. It's a very nice and very quick interactive tool to kind of test your skills. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Paula. Yeah, this is a campaign that we are very much enjoying it, and it relates to what Sally was mentioning before about the healthy use of media. I'll take a different approach. I'm not going to talk about EAVI. If obviously you are welcome to go on our website and see what we are doing and what we have done. I'm not talking about media literacy neither. There will be opportunities to do so. But for the sake of maybe engaging our audience, or I want to say the following. I have followed and listened to very interesting, excellent, in fact, interventions this week. And I have noticed that they come and they typically fit at two ends of a spectrum. On one hand, you have those that talk about research, policy, data, quantitative indicators, evidence, come on, serious stuff. And on the other hand, you have those that talk about public interest, values, civil society, humanism, how the brain works, emotion, attention, no profit. And that these ones, they think, in fact, that this is a much more noble cause, that the vision of the first one is quite narrow and limited, while the first one, I think, oh, well, you are too naive, a bit rhetoric, so we really should approach things in a way that would be effective. Now, from our privileged position somehow in Brussels, we have seen media literacy and disinformation for 15 years now in project, networks, policy, research. We have done a lot. And networks, I was mentioning before, we are in different networks of the Council of Europe, Commission, etc., etc. And we have matured a sense of what is likely to work. Work meaning is to make a difference in and what is not. And indeed, we should be in the middle of the spectrum. There are people that are fortunate enough to embed those two virtues. And when we read a book, a paper from Sonia or from David Buckingham or from many others, you see that not only is methodologically is correct, but there is a care, a passion in it, and this is very important because otherwise there are many pieces of research that go unread or that are quite flat and empty of real substance. So I think that we should really change our way of approaching these things. Again, we are fortunate because somehow media literacy selects good people. That we have come across, they have an interest for this subject by definition. But this makes the whole difference. It's like when you come across to a good doctor, a good teacher. I don't know if you have been lucky enough to meet a few, but well, you know what I mean. And these are those that will change the quality, the learning of your life. And this applies to organizations too. And that is somehow why EAVI is engaged on different areas we do policy advocating successfully. So some of you may remember when we managed to have a media literacy back in the Audiovisual Media Service Directive with the Commission, working with some governments and other stakeholders. We have been successful in having much more funding for media literacy and disinformation. This is one of the results. Let me come to EDMO in this respect, because EDMO is now well established. It's only 1 year old. Let's give it a chance. And there is so much need of EDMO. He has been repeated many times. Stacks, artificial intelligence, disinformation, in interference in elections. You have a program for the next 10 years or 100. So I think that is one thing that maybe you should take into consideration is not what to do, but what to do first. But please remember that it is now just obvious. It was not 15 years ago when we have started working on this. Now it's obvious that disinformation plays a role for the functioning of our democracy, that people need skills in order to use media well. Media literacy I like to have this discussion in another session, but it was already 10 years ago that the AVI authored 4 main pieces of research in 27 countries, in 20 different languages, with tens of national experts. And some of you that are participating to the EDMO adventure, say. But this is, and let me mention that although this is obsolete by now, this is the current understanding of media literacy that had those foundations. There is a study about the presence of media education in all 27 countries, of course, in its update, but it could be a starting point, a point of departure for successful, subsequent things. So the one thing I want to say, and that I hope that we can work with EDMO to make an impact, is that we have to change our approach. The debate cannot be the same that we had 10 years ago. We cannot preach the converted. We cannot keep talking to ourselves. Is that commercial and political interests are not really worried about what we are doing now. So let's start from what has been done and acknowledge what has been done in the past. And in my view, the key word for EDMO is impact. So I truly hope that EDMO will help us in delivering what was missing before. And research, evidence, data, transparency, data from platform cooperation I really think that there is a win-win. I'm saying to Google is a win-win approach. Let's join forces on. Of course, there are different interests over there, but there is a lot to be done. It is very welcome, by the way, the national hubs, because we have found out in the past how different it is to work in different languages with a different cultural background. In all of that, I think that for EDMO would be very interesting, and for me, to know which are the intentions of EDMO. For what I've said before, which are the ambitions of EDMO, not necessarily the expectations, which is a recipe for unhappiness, because people then they judge you against those statements, but which interest will EDMO serve? Which are the concrete benefits that people will have because of EDMO? These are we will see. I'm sure that you will do well, and I understand that is the media literacy that EDMO will work with. It's the one you mentioned, Paula, at the beginning, is related to disinformation. But I look forward to discuss and to work with EDMO on this issue again, maybe at the other conversation that we'll have in October. But my main point again is to have this balance, meaningful approach of these two different things. Is one without the other wouldn't work, and it is essential for EDMO to adopt it. I finish here, but I'm obviously available for any issue you want to discuss.
Thank you very much, Paolo. And now I give the floor to our last but not least speaker, Giacomo Mazzone. Giacomo is also a member of the EDMO Advisory Board, and he is a professional journalist. He worked a lot actually in the public service broadcasting area, and he worked a lot also at EBU. And I think we need this element also in the discussion. So Paolo, the floor is yours. Giacomo, sorry. We cannot hear you, Giacomo.
Now it works? It's okay now? Yes, perfect. Yes, thank you for the floor. Yes, as Paula said, I will intervene mainly looking at the public service broadcasting, because my consideration, because of the experience I have on my past, is that the media literacy cannot exist without having the public service broadcaster. Many of you have spoken and presented all the part that can be done at school, so the media curricula, the fact that in the visa you have to introduce this, all nice thing. But we have to remember that the problem posed by media information literacy is addressing 100% of the population or 90% of the population, not only those that are still at school. So the problem is how to reach those that have gone out from the school. And there is an interesting crossover situation where there is a lot to be done in order to improve the cooperation between the school and the media in this sense. But in any case, both elements are essential, and I want to bring my contribution especially on the side of what public service media do. In a growing number of countries across Europe, the principle of media literacy, digital citizenship, fight against disinformation has been included in the public service remits by law or in the pluriannual agreements that exist between governments or states and regulatory authorities and the public service media. For instance, in Italy 2 years ago, the concession to RAI for the public service was renewed, and in this context has been added that RAI mission is also about providing to the Italian citizen media literacy and to fight misinformation. And this is happening nowadays in many countries using the transformation of the Audiovisual Media Directive. And many countries are using this opportunity to intervene in the legislation to introduce the obligation and some measures to implement media literacy and fight against disinformation. But this is not a phenomenon only within European Union, it's a phenomenon larger than that. I am with you today, but I'm missing the conclusion that are taking place right now of the Cyprus Ministerial Media Conference of the Council of Europe, where media literacy is one of the topic that is included in the 4 recommendation. I hope that they are approved, but unfortunately, because I'm with you, I'm not aware if it had been approved. I guess so. Let's hope that it will be approved. This means that not only EU 27, but all the rest of European countries can count on something solid foundation that can be used for our work to promote media literacy and digital literacy. In a larger and broader context, I remember that UNESCO also is actively engaged in such a process. As you know, UNESCO every year, since 3 years already, they are promoting a media information literacy week. And there are many interaction between these 3 levels, the EU, the Council of Europe, and other institutions, and UNESCO at the global level. But even before this initiative at the legislative level entered in force or started, public service media were already doing this activity on their own principle. This is documented both by the Audiovisual Observatory mapping media literacy practices published in 2016, and also by the research of the Council of Europe media literacy mapping, where it's been provided detailed and comprehensive map of the many programs and initiatives run by public service across all the country of Europe. Currently, there are many initiatives going on. There is a slide that Lino could show you now, just to situate what I'm mentioning. For instance, this was a map of 2020 participating broadcaster. Lino, can you originate the slide, please? Okay, here it is. This is the slide that represents the countries where last year, at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, were on air regular program about media literacy or fighting misinformation. on TV. There are also on radio even in more countries. This shows how there is a permanent ongoing activity in this sense that is very important, very relevant. And I think that this is the first ally which we have to count when we want to promote media literacy and fighting disinformation. On the top of that, the EBU, the organization I worked for many years, has created in 2017 a network of 31 TV station, and that includes 2,000 journalists, editor, producer, also from printed media, that are working in a cooperative way to clear and verify items existing on the web. In 4 years, less than 4 years of work, 40,000 items has been verified and certified by this cooperative network. So there are then many other cooperation going on. For instance, in Austria, the cooperation is across electronic media and printed media, the same in Norway. Of course, there is the first draft network that you know, where there are many public service broadcasters that are eminent member, etc., etc. And even beyond Europe, there are many other initiatives going on where public service media, not only from Europe, but from the rest of the world, from Australia, Canada, PBS in the US are very involved. So just to close in one sentence, this is a natural lie of what we have to do. It's a natural lie for the regulators, a natural lie for the government, a natural lie for educational institutions. We need simply to create bridges and to have bigger and tighter dialogue and cooperation among us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Giacomo. So unfortunately, we are actually ready with this session. It's really a pity because actually it would have been nice to talk again more about what EDMO can do, but also to reply to the questions that we got from the audience. So with regard to that, I have one suggestion. I will share the questions with the speakers offline, and ask them if they want to reply with a very short written answer, and we will share the answers then on the events platform in the chat. So this answer won't, the questions won't stay unanswered. And I think that what we learned today is that EDMO will soon actually organize a workshop with more time to discuss more about that. And I'm not concluding because we don't have much time, but I really would like to thank you all for your very interesting contributions. My brain is running with lots of ideas and thoughts, and I hope to see you soon on other EDMO occasions. And I'm very happy that now we will also move to the other session, which is the presentation of the EDMO hubs. And actually they also have a big role on media literacy initiatives. So stay tuned and see you in a few seconds for the following session. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm writing here the questions because they're actually quite, let's say, specific. So probably some of you have the data. And if you don't mind just to have a look, oh my God, why is it not working? Okay. Whoever has the answer. And then there was one for Juliana, actually, more specific. Dimmi. Ok, non ti preoccupare. everybody, we are back on air, and actually I'm very, very pleased that today we have with us the representatives of the first 8 EDMO national or multinational hubs. They were selected on the basis of a call of the European Commission that actually dedicated an overall of 11 million euro for their funding. We have 8 hubs, but we have 12 EU member states covered plus Norway. And the aim of the Commission is actually in the next years to cover all the member states. What we saw the debate during this EDMO week is that the local level plays actually a very important role. We discussed a lot about the issue of granularity at member state level data. We discussed about the fact that we need information on which actions and policies are implemented at the member state level, both from the public and the private actors. We discussed about the language issue and the specificity of disinformation campaigns and of the media landscape actually at the local level. These are just examples that actually show the evidence of how important the national hubs are. So without further ado, what I would like to do now, it's like almost at Eurovision, but here the difference is that it's not a competition, but it's collaboration. I will introduce the hubs actually mentioning their names and also their member state cover. So I'm very happy actually to start with Nordis. This is one of the hubs that is led by Aarhus University. The countries covered are Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland. And I'm pleased to give the floor to Mathias Holm Sorensen, who will present their project. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Paula. And thank you for the possibility to say a few words about our Nordic hub. As mentioned, we are one of the multinational hubs, and we are called Nordis, which is short for Nordic Observatory for Digital Media and Information Disorder. So this Action Nordis will establish a strong independent Nordic hub, and we consist of partners in the 4 biggest Nordic countries. So as Paula mentioned, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Finland. So a Nordic consortium is, in our view, a highly relevant part of the European Digital Media Observatory, as the media ecosystem of the Nordic countries differs a lot from other European countries. Sweden, Finland, and Norway and Denmark share similar welfare state values, have similar media systems with strong publicist newspapers and public service broadcasters, along with similar democratic political systems and populations characterized both by high levels of trust in organizations, but also high levels of education. Furthermore, our fact-checking partners in the consortium have identified similarities between the type of spread of false information in the Nordic countries, which of course will be a big focus of ours during the action. So along with this, the Nordic region has a much larger percentage of active social media users than the European average. For instance, around 80% of the population is active on Facebook in each country. So this still makes the well-educated and trustful Nordic population susceptible to social media information disorder. So our aim as a consortium is to create a case of best practice to combat information disorder in relatively similar welfare state information environments, where some regional characteristics in media structure and educational system could also be evaluated for wider European impact within the EDMO network. So as of now, the current research and fact-checking in the Nordic countries are not consolidated, and thus a strengthening of this collaboration as Nordis will provide a fertile ground to tackle information disorders in an evidence-based way, and also allow for the fact-checkers and researchers to work together on larger cases in countries with similar media and information landscapes, as well as larger data sets. So a larger collaboration among fact-checkers will strengthen the resilience to outside attacks, and so will academic cross-country analysis of mis- and disinformation and associated digital literacy specific to the Nordic countries. So our research partners have been selected to represent different important fields of research studying disinformation, spanning from digital literacy and policy to social media collective behavior, information detection, and technological developments. At the same time, we are aware that our fact-checking partners does not only provide fact-checking, but they also do extensive work in developing media literacy material, publishing larger reports on the status of information disorder, as well as investigative journalistic output, which we will all use as part of the Nordis project. So for a project or action like Nordis, it's of course important to disseminate to secure a long-lasting effect. Therefore, we will utilize the expansive network of the fact-checkers within the media ecosystem of the Nordic countries, as well as the communication channels of all the different partners to secure that our research findings, our collaborative Nordic fact checks, the media literacy material that we produce find the right people. Furthermore, we will also make policy briefs based on the research findings and the collective expertise and knowledge of the consortium available. Furthermore, and finally, we will use our research findings in the academic publishing and present academic conferences to make sure that our findings will live beyond just the reports. So we have three overarching goals that I will end with. So our first one is to foster a closer collaboration in order to better and faster identify the spread of false information in the Nordic countries, and thereby create more efficient literacy and awareness campaigns. Second, we would like to provide a common methodology between researchers that can help both the use of fact-checking databases in academia, but also the cross-national collaboration in detecting and debunking fake news. Finally, we will provide relevant policy output that can give legislators a foundation for better addressing the spread of false information in the Nordic countries. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you, both the national and multinational hubs, and also EDMO as a whole. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Matthias. And I'm now moving to EDMO, Belgium and Netherlands. You will excuse my pronunciation. The coordinator is Stichting Nederlands Instituut voor Beeld en Geluid. I hope I pronounce it correctly. The focus here is regarding Belgium, covering the Dutch and then also the Flemish languages. So basically, because we have another hub that covers Belgium, but the French-speaking part. So I will give the floor now to Johan Oomen for his presentation. Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon. I hope you have a wonderful Friday afternoon. My name is Johan Oomen. I'm head of research at the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision, Nederlands Instituut voor Beeld en Geluid. Well said, Paula. I couldn't have said it better. Happy to share a few slides about the project that we are going to be embarking on. Let's see. So some facts and figures. Our project will start on October 1st with a budget of close to 1.6 million euros EU funding. We have brought together 8 core partners and 2 associates. And also not unimportant, we are super excited to be part of the EDMO family. So Sound and Vision is coordinating the project. We are Archive and Media Museum based in Hilversum, surrounded by the Dutch broadcasting. Then we have 3 universities in our consortium doing work on, say, journalism, communication studies, and also news and fact checking. The VRT is the public broadcasting in Belgium, and AMP is the newswire of the Netherlands. And then maybe more, say, well-known brand between all the logos here is Bellingcat, open source intelligence. We are also working with a software company called TextGain, who deliver natural language processing technology to be used in the process of fact-checking. So this is our core consortium. And we also work together with the 2 media literacy umbrella organizations in both our countries, so both Belgium and the Netherlands. They already provide a considerable amount of media literacy material. So the emphasis within the project is to make sure that some of the most, say, usable of these in a broader European context get translated and get added to the EDMO repository. And also with respect to media literacy, our focus will be on training journalists in order to be media literate, for instance, when it comes to ethical considerations when they are making news. So just as a sort of overview of the main contributions, in many cases this is quite comparable to the other hubs. I would like to highlight the middle bullet, developing a research environment, testing the effectiveness of fact-checking and other strategic strategies to counter disinformation. This is work coordinated by Amsterdam University to really be a lab environment to provide evidence-based academic research. I'd just like to close with highlighting two of the technologies that we will be contributing to EDMO. The first is FactRank. This is offered through our partner TextGain. And what this technology can do is to analyze social media streams and other web news data, and then using natural language processing, establish which of these, news stories are worth fact-checking. So it's basically helping fact-checkers in determining which news can be fact-checked. So these are just two screenshots that sort of highlight what the technology thinks that should be fact-checked. So this is something that we will also add to the central, connect to the central EDMO. This can support multiple languages. And finally, another tool that we are going to be providing has to do with network analytics. This is work alongside Bellingcat that allows users to get a clear insight in looking at different social media streams, how different groups are connected to each other, groups and individuals. So here are just, two visualizations that we will be providing in the context of EDMO. And that's all I had to say for now. Looking forward to working alongside the rest. And over to you, Paula.
Thank you very much. And now we move, we stay in Belgium. Oh my God, it really looks like Eurovision. We stay in Belgium, and but we add actually Luxembourg. We have the EDMO Belux hub, coordinated by the Free University of Brussels. And I give the floor to Trisha Meyer.
Thanks. Hi. Yes, indeed. We continue in Belgium. It's my pleasure to introduce the EDMO Belux, not quite Beanie Lux. Maybe we should just become one big family with Johan and his partners. But you'll notice that MediaVest, the media literacy partner, is actually present in both for the other one as an associate and for us as a core partner. So we're bringing together disinformation researchers, fact-checking, media literacy activities in Belgium and Luxembourg. Right. Yes, the whole slide issue. There we go. And so what I'd like to do is present some of what we're doing and really where we think that we can add value. So in our thinking on the proposal, we really considered ourselves to be a mini EDMO because we're bringing together multiple languages in this project, and we really are seeking to have a local embedding in the work that we do. We think it's really important to be working with the existing network of experts, be that experts in the topic area. So we have focal areas in our disinformation campaigns on political disinformation, health disinformation, climate, migration, both at a local level as well as a European level. And it's those academic experts that we bring in, as well as the media organizations, civil society partners who are the first responders as we see them to disinformation. So our network currently, beyond our core partners, and I'll introduce them, is already 45 organizations that expressed an interest, including Julianne, who was in the previous panel. really in order to ensure that this project is something that is carried and is useful also to those who are working on the ground. So we will, which is similar to all of the hubs, we will be providing fact-checking, investigative reporting, media literacy campaigns, as well as conducting research on the impact of these disinformation campaigns, as well as monitoring how platforms, so social media plays a role in countering disinformation as well. The partners are two different centers within the Vrije Universiteit Brussel. We're the coordinator, AFP, who will be providing the bulk of the fact-checking, but it's important to stress here that we will be subcontracting as well. And if the VRT is present in the BNL project, R2BF will be present in R. So we have the public broadcasters from both sides of the community represented, EU Disinfo Lab, who does investigative open source intelligence investigations, our French partner, a French-speaking university, UCL Brussels, ATC, who's providing the technical support and will ensure really that there's good harmonization and integration with the EDMO central platform, media literacy partner, subcontractors for the French-speaking part of Belgium and Luxembourg, as well as another media partner, RTL Luxembourg, who are keen to really build up the fact-checking abilities that they have. And so AFP will also play a role here in helping them really come up to capacity in this. One thing that I already emphasized is this network of experts, whether that's in terms of the topic, in terms of their kind of role in media, or in media literacy. And our aim is really to triple this hub, really to establish good relations, as well as then really triple this hub. And so part of what we're aiming for is to publish fact checks in 5 different languages. The way that we see it is that we're providing information for these first responders, many of those who are already in this network of experts, ensure that what we're bringing to them is also they're able to use easily because it's in the languages that they publish in. Provide investigative reporting in various campaigns that we notice are emerging at Belgian, Luxembourgish, or EU level that can have an impact on the politics primarily, but in various processes, societal processes, democratic processes. Our audience studies, so this is looking at the impact of disinformation campaigns, and the media literacy activities are very much on community level as well, because of this local embedding that EDMO recognizes is necessary in this differentiation that is present. I'll stop there. We're really excited to get started and really prove the value that there is at working at a local level with fact checkers, media, civil society, and academics to counter disinformation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Trisha. And now we move actually to the southwest. It's Iberifier, coordinated by the Universidad de Navarra and covering Spain and Portugal. And I'm pleased to give the floor to Ramon Salaverria.
Thank you, Paula. Welcome, everybody. Yes, we are talking from Spain and actually from the Iberian Peninsula, because this is a two-country project that covers both Spain and Portugal. I will give you some references about our project. This is the overall map of the EDMO combined with the rest of regional or national or multinational hubs. And we are located in Pamplona, you know, the running of the bulls, this tiny city where the strange things happen sometimes, not this year. And our goal is to create an Iberian hub for research on digital media monitoring disinformation, as all of the organizations that have been supported by the Commission will be done. In our case, we are a pretty large consortium composed of 23 partners in Spain and Portugal, 12 universities, 5 fact-checking organizations and news agencies, and 6 multidisciplinary research institutions. All of them combined, we are 74 people. This is a bunch of people, but we are trying to organize, and we have a plan for that because we are altogether 63 researchers and 11 journalists who belong to fact-checking organizations and news agencies that are directly involved in the project. This is the set of organizations, universities, fact-checkers and news agencies and multidisciplinary research institutions that belong to our consortium. I would like to stress one thing. In the universities, we have basically 2 types of partners. In one side, we are the media and communication studies specialized faculties or schools, but at the same time we have 3 partners that are computing technology schools, and that these organizations will be in charge of exploring the opportunities of artificial intelligence and computing technologies to tackle this information. At the same time, I would also like to stress that we have the 2 largest news public news agencies, public news agencies, both in Spanish and Portuguese, Agencia F and Agencia Lusa. Both are the largest Spanish-speaking and Portuguese-speaking news organizations. And at the same time, we also have a strong computational background because, for instance, one of the partners of our consortium is the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, which is actually the largest supercomputing facility that we have in the Iberian Peninsula. So altogether, we believe that we have a strong consortium able to tackle the challenges that we have to face in the forthcoming 30 months. We will be coordinating the whole structure from Pamplona, but as you see, there are most of the partners are located both in Madrid and Lisbon, but there are some other partners all over the territory. And how we will work? We will analyze the Iberian ecosystem of digital media with qualitative and quantitative methodologies. We have both approaches because some of the groups are specialized in qualitative studies and some others are in quantitative methodologies. We will develop computer technologies for the early detection on this information. That will be part of the task developed by the computing research organizations, of course. We will help to verify and debunk disinformation reporting to EDMO and creating a repository of fact checks of Iberian size. And we also will create or prepare strategic reports on threats on disinformation for the public dissemination and also by the request of the authorities. This is one of the conditions of the call as well. And finally, we will develop some media literacy initiatives on disinformation aimed not only to young people, to schools, but also to professional journalists. We want to try to train them with specialized techniques and skills in order to fight disinformation. And we will also spread our media literacy initiatives to society in general. We will produce, obviously, web, social media, and news content. At the same time, we are planning to produce a database which is more or less forecasted in around 5,000 media outlets, digital media outlets active. We already have a database here in Spain, and it reaches nearly 3,000 digital media active. So we expect to have another 2,000 more or less, or maybe a little bit less in Portugal. And we will produce the first Iberian mapping of digital media. We will develop some artificial intelligence studies to detect disinformation. We will create an alliance of fact checkers, not only at Iberian level, but we also are very much looking forward to collaborate with the rest of 7 hubs in Europe, but we are also planning to extend our collaboration to Latin American fact-checking organizations. Our E-Verifier projects will cover 3 languages, Spanish, Portuguese, and also Catalan, which is spoken by 8 million people. But you should take into account that the Spanish and Portuguese languages together is spoken by more than 800 million people all over the world. So that means that the reach that this project can have, we believe it can be really, really far-reaching. We are planning also to produce a prototype of an educational model for media literacy to be tested in schools. And obviously, as most of the partners are university, we're planning to produce scientific results of all kinds. And finally, we are planning also to produce analytical and strategic reports on this information. So this is basically our goal. We will try to do our best, and we hope to be successful with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now actually we move to the other side of Europe, to SEDMO, which is led by Uniwersytetu Karlova and covers the Slovakian Republic, the Czech Republic, and Poland. And I'm happy to give the floor to Václav Moravec for the presentation of their project.
Paula, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, let me introduce Central European Digital Media Observatory, which will be active in Poland, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia from October this year. Central Europe, as a former Soviet sphere of influence, face a barrage of disinformation on a range of topics, from health to politics. As EDMO sets the framework for Europe, Central European Digital Media Observatory aims to implement a major center against disinformation for the Czech Republic, Poland, and Slovakia. Central European Digital Media Observatory is supported by an extensive network of governmental, media, industrial, and non-government actors. It's strongly supported by 11 national authorities, for example, Ministry of Education in Prague and Bratislava, 20 media organizations, 15 NGOs, 10 private companies, 5 research groups, and 6 experts in the related fields. The cooperation of all these stakeholders will ensure the center's major impact. It will be help to identify and respond to the disinformation threat, effective AI-based fact-checking, and improve media literacy. The SEDMO consortium, led by Charles University in Prague, includes 8 partners and 5 subcontractors. It's a great strength. It's a diverse team of scientists from technical universities and humanities universities, together with journalists and fact checkers. Of the consortium members, the ATC will be responsible for the development of the technical infrastructure. Rapid response to disinformation and daily fact-checking will be provided by professional team from AFP, Agence France Presse, in Poland, in Czech Republic, and in Slovakia. We will plan more than 1,000 fact checks in 3 languages in Central Europe, Demagog CZ and subcontractors Concret 24, Infosecurity SK and Demagog SK. Researchers from KINIT in Bratislava in Slovakia and Czech Technical University in Prague, who have extensive experience in artificial intelligence, NLP, and machine learning. They will develop methods and digital tools to improve and accelerate rebuttal. Other consortium members will investigate the impact of disinformation on society. These members include the University of Social Sciences and Humanities in Poland, Charles University in Czech Republic, University of St. Cyril and Methodius in Trnava in Slovakia, and subcontractors Collegium Civitas in Poland and Palacký University in the Czech Republic. Charles University will lead the integration of the technical and humanities disciplines of the consortium throughout interdisciplinary research activities. The interdisciplinarity characters of our consortium will be an added value of its outputs. For example, analytical reports on the state of disinformation, which are mainly prepared by humanities researchers and journalists, will be enriched by insights gained from digital tools created by the consortium's technical researchers and developers. Media literacy campaigns will not only rely on traditional techniques such as workshop, symposium, webinars, but will also include innovative interactive tools such as self-tests or serious games to improve and engage the public. Our dream, or my dream in Prague, is to create EDMO Index. It's a unique longitudinal research that would build on a large panel of a representative sample of the population in the Czech Republic, which will mean interesting monthly outputs concerning not only digital and media literacy, the population's resistance to disinformation and misinformation, but also the application of AI in journalism and media. In other words, it will be an indicator of the population's digital literacy, its transformations, and the population's resistance to disinformation. There are our plans, and look forward to working with colleagues from EDMO in Brussels and other hubs. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I'm happy now to give the floor to Aileen Callotty from Dublin City University, and she will introduce the activities of the Ireland Hub.
Hello, everyone. I just can't share the screen at the moment until the previous one has changed.
I'm sure we will get there soon.
Here we go. There you go. Yes, so I'm Aileen Callotty from Dublin City University and the coordinator of the Ireland Hub, which will be formed by these 4 partners here. And although we're the Ireland Hub, we're very delighted to be working with an excellent UK partner, the NLP group at the University of Sheffield, which is very experienced in this area. And our other 2 partners are 2 innovative Irish partners. NewsWhip is a technology company that's internationally recognized for its content intelligence services. And the Journal is a very popular online news source, and it's the only IFCN accredited fact checker in the Republic of Ireland. So our hub overall is divided into 6 areas, and you can see here which partner is going to lead on each. DCU will be taking over with coordination, media literacy and communication. University of Sheffield will lead on technical services and integration with the core services platform. NewsWhip will lead on monitoring and detection, and the journal will lead on disclosures and analysis with a specific focus on fact-checking. So in terms of the technical services, the University of Sheffield has a suite of tools to enhance the workflows of fact-checkers and journalists. So these include text processing tools, a meme and OCR text extractor, so that would be for analyzing visual disinformation, but also topic and stance classifiers and indicators to assess credibility. And these are all things that would help a journalist or a fact checker decide whether a claim needs to be assessed. And all of these services have REST APIs, and 2 of them have already been integrated into the Truly Media platform. Then with NewsWhip, they'll be working on the detection and monitoring, and they've developed some award-winning technologies for real-time discovery and virality predictions, as well as a comprehensive database of historical news engagement. So you can assess the engagement going back over 5 years. So NewsWhip Spike provides insight into what content is gaining influence at the moment, and it predicts how is that content going to spread online and across which platforms, while NewsWhip Analytics will be used to track the historical engagement around specific content or specific events such as elections. And that data can be broken down by country, by language, or by topic. So we expect we should be able to generate data sets for this, not just for disinformation campaigns in Ireland, but also potentially in collaboration with other hubs. Then the journal and DCU will work on the disclosures and analysis. The journal will investigate claims. They'll collaborate on the core services platform and publish fact checks. And they'll also contribute to workshops on tool integration to ensure that the workflows make sense for fact checkers. Meanwhile, DCU will work with the data to evaluate trends and produce situational analyses of harmful disinformation campaigns. And one of our key aims is to collaborate with stakeholders, including the journalists who are reporting disinformation, but also the groups that are targeted by harmful disinformation campaigns, to help them understand what's happening and also to help them develop best practices in response. And of course, we'll also be collaborating with research partners for a deeper understanding. In addition to those tasks, DCU will lead on media literacy, on research for the National Authority, and on an evaluation of financial viability in the news sector. DCU itself has considerable expertise in this area, and there's also a lot of activity in Ireland at the national level. For example, there's a strong network of media literacy stakeholders who all volunteer and collaborate on campaigns and seminars. This includes the major technology platforms that are based in Dublin. It includes most of the national media, libraries, schools, and so on. We've also already produced 2 reports on the Code of Practice on Disinformation, and we're working on a 3rd report. And the government this year has initiated a national review on the future of media. So we think there's a very strong basis here already to build on with EDMO, and potentially many insights and materials that we can contribute from Ireland that may be relevant for the other hubs. And here you can see the network of Irish stakeholders that have already supported our bid. So it includes public authorities, the media sector, civil society, and then a range of researchers who are drawn from law, policy, and communications. So once we begin in October, we hope to expand this network and bring more people involved with the view to establishing this committed community who can work together to address this problem. And then finally, of course, we look forward to collaborating with EDMO itself and with all of the hubs across Europe. And hopefully we'll have another opportunity to see where some of the overlaps between our hubs might lie. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we go back to the south now, and I will give the floor to Gianni Riotta, who will present the Italian Digital Media Observatory that is led by Luis, Libera Università Internazionale degli Studi Sociali Guido Carli. The floor is yours, Giovanni.
Thank you, Paula, and thanks to all the friends and to all the colleagues that are here. I'm Gianni Riotta. I'm the director of the Master of Communication and Digital Journalism at LUIS and the director of the Data Lab. This sounds big, but I'm just a reformed journalist trying to make sense of the digital communication and the disinformation, because of course, as an old journalist, we are very, very worried about, we've been very worried for many years about the spreading of disinformation, not just what disinformation is doing to our whole job, but mostly what disinformation is doing to our open societies and democracies and our everyday life itself. Luis is the coordinator of the team. The team includes RAI, that is the Italian public TV, and RAI will give our team the enormous power of penetration and the enormous reputation that the public TV has in Italy. Don't believe the hype of people that are critical of RAI. I've been the editor of TG1, that is the main news program of RAI, and there is a segment of Italian society that is really faithful to RAI, and the trust that people have in RAI is still very, very big. And so that the public TV will give us a hand trying to explain people how to deal with disinformation and how to deal with social media is going to be very, very useful. Then Team is the former Italian phone monopoly and company, and we are talking to their science department and to their data department, and they of course can track an enormous amount of data, and they can track how this information and the information works in the country. I'll give you just an example. The Italian daily newspaper at the beginning of the pandemic, early in 2020, had pages and pages about the big escape. Millions of Italians running from north to south. I'm a southern myself, in order to avoid to be stuck in the north. And there was really a national drama about this exodus of people from north to south. And eventually data journalists tracking anonymously, of course, with companies that track how people travel in the country, assessed that there were just a few hundred people moving. But of course, a camera in front of a few hundred people and a reporter, old-fashioned reporter with a notebook in front of a few hundred people moving from north to south, they generated a national panic that could have been stemmed easily. In Tor Vergata, it's a public university in Rome, will work with us on the business side and seeing how people are affected by disinformation and fake news when it comes to their economic life, their business choice, how to invest. And especially in a country that has a large share of population that is quite old, including, of course, me, very often disinformation preys on this kind of people. And so our friend and colleagues in Tor Vergata will help assessing the problem there and how people behave when they're affected by disinformation. T6 is a think tank and analyst team, and they will be instrumental in establishing what the area and the segments and the dimension of our research will be, and tracking the data and reporting to us the data every day. And then we have a very robust group of fact-checking and debunkers and people assessing the truthworthiness of sources. And they are NewsGuard, familiar with NewsGuard, the American organization that now has a European base too. and Pagella Politica, that are the team of Pagella Politica is one of the oldest fact checker in Europe, with their leader Giovanni Zagni. Both Giovanni Zagni and myself, we are part of the European Digital Media Observatory, and Paula has to suffer us already in that domain. Now we'll have to suffer us here in the European too. With us, there is now an interesting array of media organization. We have GEDI. GEDI is the consortium that has Repubblica, La Stampa, Il Secolo XIX, all the local newspapers in Italy. Corriere della Sera will support our activity, and Fondazione Enel, that is the main coalition of Italian companies focusing on sustainability and the green economy. And then we have two international partners that are Reporters Sans Frontières and Alliance for Democracy. And Luis is already working in a program against disinformation with Harvard University and the Shorenstein Center. And both Harvard University and the Shorenstein Center of the School of Government at Harvard University will keep focusing on what we're doing. This is who we are. Let me tell you, I knew that I was going to speak last, so I didn't bother you with any slides, because I know that you were already cooked enough at the end of the day. Just let me tell you in one sec what we believe. We are not happy, and I say this not with particular pride, and I said it very, very humbly. We are not particularly happy with what we are achieving against disinformation. I was sat in the European high-level group against disinformation and fake news a few years ago. We think that we are losing the war. We see the forces of disinformation getting past the banking, fact-checking, e-learning, all the different tools that we are applying. I listened to your presentation. Really, we're eager to listen to what you are and what you're doing, and I'm ready to work with you guys and to learn from you guys. But I think we are losing the war. I think that we are losing the war. I think that the forces of disinformation, we have seen it in the United States and in Europe during these pandemics, are winning. People, as in the United States, really died by the thousands simply listening to the wrong website, or simply listening to the wrong TV station, or simply reading the wrong newspaper. So we have to get our act together. I think that we have been so far a regular army fighting a guerrilla forces, and we go to the field every day with our very smart uniform, and we get soundly beaten by dirty, invisible, and nasty people. We want to study disinformation, but we want to beat disinformation. Disinformation is not a universal gravitation. It's not a scientific phenomenon. It's a political and cultural phenomenon. It's a social phenomenon. There are people spreading it, and then, of course, the structure of our public opinions absorb it. So we are going to study it with you. We're going to observe it with you, but we want to beat disinformation, and we want to win the war against disinformation and against lies. So I'm very thrilled to be with you. I hope to see you soon, very soon. I hope to learn from you, and please stay in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gianni. And now we move to France, De Facto, which is coordinated by Fondation Nationale des Sciences Politiques. And I'm very happy to give the floor to Christine Bouéjar.
Thank you. I'm not allowed yet to activate the screen share, but maybe I will. No, not yet. I mean, I need the organizer to allow me. Can you hear me? Okay, it still doesn't work, so never mind, I do without. The consortium in France, which is called De Facto, it's with Sciences Po, who is a famous university in Paris, and which has a school of journalism, and AFP, that you know of. We've been doing a lot of fact check, and we are now in about 80 countries in the world doing this. We also have Clémy, who is the main French media and information literacy center in the French educational system, and we have XWiki, which will do the website. So our objectives, they are basically to collaborate as all the other hubs. I mean, as in many countries, I guess, I mean, De Facto will be unprecedented in France. It doesn't exist. We never had this kind of platform for journalists and universities to talk together. So we really think from this point of view, it's going to be extremely enriching for both sides. We want to respond to disinformation very quickly. We want to consider the big picture with the university studies. And we want, and that's absolutely key for us, we want to empower the public. And so we have designed tools and ways of empowering the public, which I will come back to very soon. So in addition to the main partners that I talked about, we have an additional network of journalists, academic researchers, and media educators. In terms of fact checkers, we will have 6 other fact checkers. Le Monde, France Info, which is the main news radio in France, and Libération, etc., etc. We'll have 11 academic laboratories and 9 educational organizations to help us meet these targets. We will also, as all the other fact hubs, we will develop tools to improve the detection of misinformation. AFP will be part of it with the universities. We've already developed with others, We Verify, Invid, which are very useful tools to debunk disinformation, and we think there's a lot to do still to improve the speed and the width of the misinformation. Giovanni was saying we were losing the war. I think that the fact that we can elaborate new tools is going to help us tremendously to win this war. So this will be a key part of our hub. Of course, we plan to publish a lot of fact checks, and this is essential to empower the public. We want this website to be visited by a lot of people, and we know that, of course, universities can't produce an everyday output. This is not their rhythm. This is not how they work, and they work really on the long term and middle term. So we plan to publish something like 1,000 fact check during the period, which basically it's not a figure out of nothing. It's a figure which will allow us to publish at least 1 fact check a day, because we want the public to come back every day on the platform. We really want the public to be interested in this platform. So the regularity of a publication, we think, should help the public to be on this platform. And we think that there's an opportunity in France. You may know that in May 2022, we'll have presidential elections, and everybody is forecasting a fight between the current president, Macron, and the extreme right, Marine Le Pen. And this is going to generate, of course, a flow of disinformation. So we intend to be here to show the people where it is and what it is. And in order to really, I mean, we saw it in 2017 as well. And there was already an alliance of fact checkers at that time to fight against disinformation, and it was effective, I must say. And we hope it will be even more effective this time, because there's going to be a lot of it. So this will be really an important meeting between the public and us, to make this de facto hub work. There's another feature which we think should help the public to come on the website, and this is empowering them through tutorials and guidebooks to fight disinformation. So when you go on the website, and we will do it also in other websites we will be collaborating with, such as Trisha's or VacLabs, and we will show how to spot disinformation with examples and how to debunk it yourself with open source softwares, which will be available on the website, and we will show people how to use them, because we think that if we want to win this war, I mean, it can't be only journalists. It has to be the whole public understanding what it's about and how you spot it and how you debunk it. Otherwise, we will still live in complotism, in social networks, pros and cons, etc., etc. So I think this will be one of our main targets, and of course, we'll do all the other things which were required in the call, which are media literacy, which is research, of course, and which is advising the public authorities. That's all for me.
Thank you very much, Christine. So we are running a little late, so I will conclude by thanking you all. It was a real pleasure to meet you the first time. I really hope the next time will be in Florence. And yeah, I mean, EDMO is really happy to see that the network is expanding and that we are working all together, actually united, as we say, against online disinformation. I will now give the floor to Professor Maduro, who is also the chair of the executive board of EDMO, to conclude this amazing EDMO week. And I want to thank all for the great collaboration for this event. Thank you very much. Bye.
Hello, everybody. Just a quick farewell to all of you, with big thanks for having participated and taking part in this first EDMO week. I think it was a huge success and a huge opportunity for the growing community engaged in fighting disinformation, and that EDMO wants to promote, and EDMO wants to favor the cooperation to come together to discuss these issues in a variety of topics. I want in particular to thank all the team at EDMO that was involved in the planning and in the organization, people such as Paula, Gori and Lisa Ginsburg that played a crucial role in the entire planning of the event, but also everybody that worked in the implementation of this week, and in particular Alexander and Elena, but also all the technicians that worked behind the scenes to make it possible to organize this event for a full week online. We had more than 500 registered participants and more than 40 speakers. It's an impressive number, and I think it is a very, very good start for something that we hope will continue to take place in the years to come as EDMO and the community around EDMO continues to grow. Thank you all for having participated in this week.